Welcome to the Real Estate and Small Business for Management Consultant Show. Whether you hold a corporate 9-to-5 or have determined that you want to explore the small business realm, this show is for you. Christian Carrillo talks to entrepreneurs and experts in the real estate and small business realms to discover what they do, why they do it, and how they do it to help show you the art of the possible. And now your host, Christian Carrillo.
Welcome back to the Real Estate and Small Business for Management Consultant Show. I'm your host, Christian Carrillo. Today, we've got a special interview for you folks. Our guest is Scott Parker. Thank you for being on the show, Scott. Really
here, bud. Sure.
Great. So Scott is a restaurateur and entrepreneur based in Arlington, Virginia. He works with many awesome partners to create and build companies that will have an impact in their community and beyond. Several of Scott's brands have multiple locations encompassing 15 properties throughout Arlington and the greater Washington, D.C. area. For those of you in the D.M.V, you may be familiar with some of his brands such as Bash Boxing, TiTO, Barley Mac, Bronson Bier Hall, Playfull Pack, Bearded Goat Barber, Roy Boys, among others. Quite the mouthful. Scott, welcome to the show. Really appreciate your time.
No, thanks, bud. Good to be here. Good to talk to you, man.
Of course. And, you are literally the epitome of what it means to be an entrepreneur, right? You see potential in the market before others do. I'll focus on adding value in the communities where you operate. Why don't you get us started with a little bit more about who you are and what you do, right? We provided an overview earlier, but let's dive into your superpowers.
Sure. So, you pointed out a little bit. So I guess I'm partially restaurateur and partially entrepreneur, maybe a little bit of both or something. I started off in restaurants. I opened my first bar when I was 30 years old, 9 years ago. And since then have continued in restaurants and opened some cool restaurants and bars. And then after that have gotten into different types of small business. I would call it, like experience retail. So barbershops, boxing gyms, dog daycares, stuff like that. Stuff where you are going to go to a location, have some sort of an experience, whether you're dropping your dog off for a great day, getting a haircut, getting a workout in, stuff like that, as well as if you're just going to get a great meal or a couple drinks. A lot of my experience as a kid was working in retail and small business. And so after college, at some point I decided to stick with that, first with restaurants and then, from there to other small business stuff.
That's awesome, Scott. So I'm sort of wondering, right? You came out of school, and at what point did you determine, hey, perhaps if you were pursuing a corporate 9-to-5, at what point did you decide, hey, suit and tie is not for me, I'm going to pursue entrepreneurship instead?
Yeah, probably almost right away. I was in my first corporate job, full-on suit and tie type deal when I was selling insurance in fall of 2006 now. I guess that was fall of 2006. And right away I realized I just really, the 9-to-5 thing didn't feel right to me. I was not passionate about what I was doing. I didn't know what I was going to do with my future. And so very early on in my career, maybe the first couple months, I started to think about, owning a bar and bar ownership and really just getting out there and doing my own thing. And it took me 4 or 5 years to sort of save enough money to do it. But I think I always knew that I wanted to do it.
That's phenomenal. So why don't you take us through that process, right? I think a lot of people sort of aspire to do something, but they may have some fear, right? Or they don't know the steps or who to approach.
Yeah.
What were the steps that you took to sort of begin that process?
Yeah. So for me, it was a lot of, working all the time, working my 9-to-5, but then also working 5-6 nights a week in restaurants to try to save money to get to a place where I could have money to invest. Back in 2006, entrepreneurship in general was in a different place. You didn't hear as many conversations about VCs or angel investors or investors in general. And I really didn't know anything about getting investors. I really didn't know what I was doing in general. So I thought I was going to have to save all the money to get the funding that I needed to do my first restaurant. So that's essentially what I did. So for 5 or 6 years, I worked all the time. I saved a bunch of cash. And then when I got to be right about turning 30, I invested all that cash into my first bar. And that bar really worked well. It was called A-Town in Arlington. It opened in 2012. And when that one really worked, then from there, I started thinking, what else can I do here? what else in small business can I be successful at? And then slowly over time, I started to develop these other companies.
That's great. And I'm sort of happy you brought up sort of the different business sectors and operating models that you decided to pursue, right? So why did you decide to go into these diverse business sectors and operating models, right? I'm thinking about food and nightlife, pet care, physical exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I try to do is always just go into something that I think is an emerging industry, or if not emerging, maybe a growth industry. If you look at, what we do with Bash Boxing, group fitness, these businesses where it's just a place you go to take one type of class, that industry is really still booming and is expected to continue to boom. Dog daycare, the same thing. There are a lot of people that know what dog daycare is. To a lot of people, it's still brand new, and so it's an industry that we're seeing a ton of growth in. Barbershops as well. Barbershops have been around forever. There's been some high-end or premier barbershops, if you will, but it's becoming more and more of a trend as well. You're seeing a lot more people that are willing to spend $50 on a haircut instead of 15 to 20, right? So that's the first part of it, is looking for industries and stuff that I think is growing and emerging and going to get bigger. The second part of it is finding the right partners. You obviously can't do any of this without the right partners. And so for me, I look for experts that are really, really good at what they do in their specific niche. And then I, try to partner with those people to create exciting brands. So for dog daycare, my brother runs that whole company. For Bash Boxing, we have an amazing CEO named Alex. She's been in fitness for, a decade and has incredible experience and is just a really fierce leader. And then in Beer to Goat Barber, I'm partnered with two barbers who have over 20 years experience, right? And so I'm looking for industries where I think there's a lot of growth potential, but also where I can partner with someone that really knows what they're doing.
That's phenomenal. I'm definitely happy that you brought up partnerships, because I think that's something that individuals that we talk to have stressed a lot, right?
Yep.
We often hear, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go with people. So
Yep.
super happy that you brought that up. And sort of on that topic, it's very evident to me that your businesses attract a lot of people. What would you say is the secret behind, let's say, your marketing strategy?
Yeah, sure. I think it really starts with just the culture of the team that's in house. All of our companies, we work hard to try to provide a great place for people to work, a place where they feel sort of committed to the overall mission with us, where they feel valued, where they feel they work at an awesome spot that they can be proud of. It really starts with that. So even before we think too much about marketing a brand, it's about building the culture and making sure that there's an amazing culture inside. And then what we found is that our employees can be some of our best marketers for us, in that showing, giving great customer service, showing how much they really love working for the company, talking to their friends about it. But it all starts with that first culture, and really building the right team inside. Then from there, the branding and making a really good customer experience sort of takes a life of its own, as we try to just build brands that are just a little bit different than what's out there and around the market. So not that they're, that much bigger or better or bolder, but maybe just a little bit different than what's out there right now. And so though the combination of those two things, trying to create a brand that's unique and also trying to build a really strong company culture, those two things have kind of created a marketing machine for us in themselves.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think you've definitely got the approach to sort of starting and targeting businesses there. But would you say there's been like one challenge that you faced that's redefined your business career?
Man, that's tough. I don't know if there's been one specific challenge. I think more than anything, what we talked about in the beginning of the call, just being unhappy and, sort of the corporate America grind.
Hmm.
I think what's taught me a lot recently in the pandemic year is just failure and what comes with that. We lost a couple properties, a couple businesses in the pandemic, and I've come to really realize that the failures are really never as bad as you think they're going to be. Losing a business is frankly just not the end of the world. It's not like you're losing a family member or something horrible is happening to you. It's just a business. And so I think what the lesson I've learned in the past year is that failure is okay. It's going to happen. I think I failed a lot, on a day-to-day basis. I fail every day, different stuff that we're trying. But as far as fully closing businesses for good, these were some of my first experiences with that. And I think it just really taught me that it is what it is. You look at the biggest companies in the world. You read articles about Amazon and how many failures they've had. You look at Apple; they've failed with tons of stuff that they've tried. Failure is just part of the process, and so I think over time I've been able to really, really completely remove my ego from that. Now it's not that I couldn't care less if something fails, but it doesn't get to me emotionally. It's just something that happens, and I think learning to accept failure, learn from it, and move on very quickly is something that's really helped me a lot recently.
That is phenomenal, Scott. Kudos to you, man. That's exceptional. Definitely wanted to sort of poke you at this now that you brought up the pandemic. I'm very curious, how were your business models impacted by the pandemic? And do you think that, let's say, Arlington County and Virginia in general did enough to help small businesses through the pandemic?
Yeah, I think for the most part we did okay. Knock on wood through the pandemic. Hopefully we're coming out of it. For the most part, we did okay. Some businesses better than others. I think it really depends so much on location and on what your specific business was. I'm always having conversations with people about this, and I think that even with what I do, I think there's a lot of luck involved in business, and I think that the pandemic was the best example of that, because if you owned a huge sort of sit-down full-service restaurant that doesn't do a lot of takeout, then the pandemic probably crushed you. It rocked your world, right? But if you owned a bike shop, then you probably killed it, because you may have seen, but there was, everyone was looking for things to do outside last summer. And so there was, in many places, in many cities, there was a line to get into bike shops, and bikes were delayed. So bike shops were doing more business than they've ever done before. And so that's where I think a lot of luck came into it. It really depended on what your business was. You could have a business that wasn't doing that well before the pandemic, but now because it appeals to people during the pandemic, you're killing it. You could have another business that was, doing amazing during the whole, or I'm sorry, prior to the pandemic, and then because of the pandemic, you started doing terrible, right? And so I think there was a lot of luck in it. I will say, Virginia, I don't know if it would be fair for me to say whether or not Virginia did enough, but I will say that I feel that we got really lucky having most of our businesses located in Virginia as opposed to DC, especially in the nightlife and restaurant industry. DC was way more shut down than here in Virginia. And so I think we got really lucky to that end. And just that a lot of our properties were in Arlington and around here, some in Maryland as well too, and not that many in DC. I only had 3 that I was involved in DC when the pandemic happened. And so, it's a weird world, man. And the pandemic really, I think there's always a lot of luck involved in business. Of course you have to try hard and have a good strategy and do your best at everything. But I think there's a lot of luck involved in certain aspects of business. And the pandemic was unbelievable. I think you could see pizza shops and places that do a ton of takeout or were already doing a lot of takeout, absolutely booming. But then if you're going back to my other example, if you're a huge sit-down restaurant that's fine dining that doesn't do a lot of takeout, maybe you were struggling. Maybe you weren't. I don't know. But there was a lot of luck in it. And I think, for some people, they just were on the wrong side of the coin. Others were on the right side and really thrived during all this.
Yeah, that's exceptional. I think you definitely hit a lot of sort of points that are pretty important, but I think it all sort of goes back to trying to have a strategy, right? And having systems and processes in place in the event that something happens, because something will happen.
Yes.
So that's amazing. Thank you for that. And, what is one piece of advice you give to, let's say, an entrepreneur or an individual that has entrepreneurial aspirations now that you've sort of gone and you've become successful in all of your endeavors?
Yeah, I would just say try it, take risks. I think a lot of people there's a lot of really talented people out there who really want to do something on their own and start their own thing. And they just are, I don't know what the reason is. There's probably a myriad of reasons, but they never do it. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who could have been super successful had they just tried that idea, right? And they never do it, excuse me. So I think it's just take chances. If you don't be afraid to fail, don't be afraid to try something new in your already successful business. A lot of times businesses get stuck in a rut. They keep doing what they've been doing because it's been successful when they should be trying new things. So I think there's that as well. But more than anything, just take that chance. Business is not life and death. Losing money is not life and death. And so it's important to take chances. You only live once. And I think there's a lot of great would-be entrepreneurs out there who never take that chance, and they never really get the success that they could have had if they would.
That's amazing, Scott. Yeah, I think before sort of meeting you, I think I definitely knew that I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship, but I always had this little bit of fear, right? And I wasn't certain if it was because I was going to let myself down or I was worried about what other people would think.
Yep.
But then I sort of started to surround myself around individuals that were doing this stuff, right? And
Yep.
just hearing their advice has sort of really propelled me to pursue this. So definitely agree that it's sort of scary at first, but once you get the hang of it, if you ever truly do get the full hang of it, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
gets a lot better. But I
Yeah.
think it's sort of like a learning process, right? As you go, you're continually learning and sort of failing, but failing forward and continuing as you go.
Yep. Agreed.
That's amazing. So, I'm very curious. I sort of see all the amazing things that you're doing, and I sometimes wonder, like, we both have the same 24 hours. How is this man accomplishing so much? But
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about your daily routine, and how that has helped you become successful?
Yeah. So, like I spend a lot of time reading about top performers, trying to learn from other people. So from that, I've become a little bit of an early riser. I'm not getting up at a crazy hour like some of these people, at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. But I generally get up around 4:35 and start to do some sort of a workout and maybe a little reading to get my day going. Um, throughout the day, I'm like anyone going through a lot of meetings, all that kind of stuff. But I'm also spending a ton of time. I'm just spending. I'm only spending time on the things I need to be doing. So I'm constantly, I'll be one or two or three words into an email, and as soon as I realize it's not for me, it's for someone else on my team, I'm deleting it. I'm constantly passing tasks off. If it's not something that I can do the best, better than anyone else on my team, then I let someone else do it, or someone else naturally does it. So I think that's a big part of my process that I think people always ask me the same thing. How do you have all these different companies going? How are you doing all these different things? That's the biggest part. Is I have partners first of all, and second of all, I'm only doing the things that I really feel I can add value and be the best at on my team. If it's something that is outside of my wheelhouse, I'm not even going near it. I'm not trying to learn it. I'm not trying to take it on. I'm just passing it off to someone else.
And I'm sort of curious on that, Scott. Definitely it's very interesting. How do you sort of not get caught in sort of the hustle, right? I think a lot of people sort of glorify I wake up at 4 a.m. and I go until midnight, right? How do you
Yeah.
not get caught up on that and focus on delegation?
Yeah, it's a challenge, man, because there has been a lot of time in my life where I have been more of what you just referenced. I'm waking up, working 15 hours, all that kind of stuff, and I've kind of been able to taper off that. I think what I've learned over time is that in our modern world, a lot depends on leverage and using technology and using other people and finding other ways to get more done in less time, right? And so I can spend my days working 15 or 16 hours a day, but that just because I do that and just because I put in all the time, that in of itself doesn't mean I'm going to get more done than if I worked for 7 or 8 hours, right? It really depends on the work that I do, the people I can delegate to, the way I can, use leverage to get more done. And so it took me a long time to rationalize that. I used to think I needed to work as hard as I possibly can every day, all the time. But then I started to realize that just because I'm working, that in of itself, doesn't mean anything, right? If I go out somewhere and just go into if I go out somewhere and just use a sledgehammer to just break bricks for 15 hours a day, I might be working like crazy, but that's not going to help me build a company. I'm just sitting there smashing bricks, right?
Mm.
And so it's the same thing with the work, my day-to-day work. I examine things I'm doing now and I ask myself, do I really need to set an hour meeting for this, or can I set it for 15 minutes? Do I need to go and do this in person, or can I do it on Zoom? Do I even need to address this at all and read this 40-page legal document, or can one of my partners and my attorney, who are a lot better at that stuff, read it for me and I don't need to do any of it, right? And so I think that's what I'm really working on now is, the working smarter thing, but really trying to use leverage and get the most I can out of the hours I have instead of just saying, let me just work, 20 hours a day.
That's phenomenal. And I've heard that's sort of the sort of way that you scale businesses, right? Leveraging other people's time,
Yep.
money, skills, knowledge, and so on. So
Sure.
I love that. Scott, I think it's definitely been a pleasure getting to know more about you here. And I'm sure our listeners have picked up on really some golden nuggets that they will hopefully take advantage of. But are you ready for our quick response round?
I'm ready, bud. Let's do it.
Let's get after it. All right. First question here. If you lost it all today, what would you do?
I think about that sometimes, and that's a great question. And, I think I would just start back where I started before, which is serving tables and being a bartender and get my cash flow going while I figured out what I was going to do. I think I'm in a more fortunate position than other people if they lost it all, because I think because of my track record and my network, I could go to people I know and say, hey, can you loan me some money to start a new company? The rest of my companies failed, right? But I think that first things first, I would think about cash flow. And I think I've remained humble through this, and I'm willing to be humble again going forward. So if I had to go back to serving tables today, even as a 38, almost 39-year-old guy, it wouldn't make me feel some type of way. I would do whatever I had to do to succeed and start over.
That's phenomenal, Scott. And you sort of have the systems and processes in place, right? You talk about the track record, so definitely would help. That's phenomenal. Cool. All right, question number 2 here. Going forward, what do you have planned in your businesses and why?
Yeah, so what I have going forward is I'm just going to start to try to scale some of the companies I do have. So Playfull Pack, Goat Barber, Bash Boxing, all 3 of those will start to add more and more locations as time goes on. Playfull Pack Dog Daycare will add hopefully 3 to 4 locations per year starting now. Goat Barber will add a couple locations per year and hopefully franchise. And Bash Boxing, we've already started franchising as well too, with hopefully going national. So now I'm kind of in a place where I've started these brands locally, and I'm going to see how far they can go, around the area, maybe around the country, maybe one day around the world.
That's phenomenal, Scott, and congratulations to all of that. That's very exciting.
Thanks, man.
Question number 3 here. If you could give our listeners one piece of advice today, what would it be?
I think it would be start young. I think I didn't really realize that entrepreneurship was a possibility until I was maybe 25, and then I didn't, get into it for real until I was 30. And not that I didn't realize it was a possibility, but it wasn't as buzzy as it is now. It wasn't as accepted as it is now. Entrepreneurship was sort of something you looked at as like, the people that were entrepreneurs were the weirdos or the insane risk takers, where now it's like everyone's doing it, right? And so I wish I would have started opening businesses when I was, 15 instead of 30. And so I would just recommend people, if you think you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a business owner, start young and then see how you can do.
Great advice here, Scott. Could not agree more. Yeah. All right, last question here for you, Scott. How can our listeners get to know more about you and connect with you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram. It's just @Scott Parker, my name. Also, my website is scottparkerbrands.com, BRANDS, scottparkerbrands.com. Both of those have my LinkedIn page, have my Facebook, have my Instagram. You can shoot me a DM there. And then my website has all the companies that I'm currently a part owner of. And so I'm still happy to take conversations and help young entrepreneurs in any way. Anyone can contact me anytime.
Scott, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. It's really been a pleasure. I think you've definitely provided a lot of value to our listeners, and I hope they definitely take advantage of what you're offering and reach out, because I think Awesome. You're a phenomenal resource.
Thanks, Christian. Always great talking to you, man. You guys have a great day.
You too, my friend. Take care of yourself. Talk soon.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate and Small Business for Management Consultants Show, brought to you by Quetzal Capital Group. Quetzal Capital Group works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate while also looking to add value in the communities where they operate. Quetzal Capital Group, client-centered, data-driven, result-oriented. Connect with us online at quetzalcapitalgroup.com to learn more.